So, the most effective form of manipulation in the human psychological playbook doesn't actually involve, threats or screaming
Right. Yeah.
or any kind of physical intimidation.
Right. Yeah, it really does.
It actually involves five of, arguably the most romantic words in the English language. I did it for you.
Which is, it's just the ultimate paradox, isn't it? On the surface, it sounds like the language of profound devotion.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the grand gesture,
Yeah.
the sacrifice. It's that selfless act that we are culturally conditioned to view as like the highest possible form of love.
Which is exactly why it is such a brilliant camouflage for control. Because I want you to imagine a scenario.
Okay.
Imagine someone close to you, maybe a parent or a long-term partner, or even a mentor you've trusted for a decade, looks you dead in the eye and drops that exact phrase. I did it for you.
Right.
Think about what actually happens in your body in that moment. For a lot of people, those 5 words do not trigger a warm, fuzzy feeling of being cherished.
No, absolutely not.
They instantly create this, heavy, sinking knot in the pit of your stomach. A cold wave of guilt just washes right over you.
Yeah, you feel this sudden, intense, almost claustrophobic pressure to just nod, agree to whatever is being demanded, and basically completely abandon your own needs.
Exactly. And that visceral physiological reaction is incredibly telling. We have this fascinating psychological document we're looking at today that breaks down the mechanics of this specific manipulation.
It really is fascinating. That knot in your stomach. That's your autonomic nervous system recognizing a threat long before your conscious logical mind can even process the language.
Wow. So your body just knows.
Your body understands that you are being cornered.
So our mission for this deep dive today is to basically decode that cornering mechanism. We're going to deconstruct how a concept as beautiful as human sacrifice gets forged into a psychological weapon.
Right, and we want to explore the architecture of this specific type of emotional blackmail, how you can differentiate it from genuine love,
Which is huge.
and most importantly, how you can defend your autonomy when someone tries to deploy this phrase to erase your boundaries.
Okay, let's unpack this. But to do this properly, we first have to establish a very clear foundational baseline.
You're right.
Yes. We have to make a crucial caveat right out of the gate. Sacrifice, in and of itself, is not the enemy here.
Right.
We have to be really careful not to pathologize the act of doing hard things for the people we care about. In healthy, securely attached dynamics, people make massive sacrifices all the time.
They uproot their lines to move across the country for a partner's career opportunity, right?
Exactly.
Or they drain their savings to help a sick family member. They put their own ambitions on ice to raise children. That kind of mutual support is basically the glue that holds human society together.
It is. Altruism is a beautiful, vital part of the human experience. The pathology doesn't reside in the act of giving.
Okay.
The pathology begins entirely with what happens after the sacrifice is made.
Yes. It is the precise moment when a freely given gift undergoes this dark alchemy and is transformed into a receipt. It becomes an emotional invoice.
An emotional invoice, that is such a wild concept because it completely reframes the dynamic.
It really does.
It implies a transaction that one party was entirely unaware of. It's like checking your mail and finding a gorgeous, brightly colored package labeled free gift.
Right.
You open it, you enjoy it, you feel a sense of warmth toward the sender, but then 3 years later, a collection agency knocks on your door.
Yes.
And you realize that by opening that supposed gift, you were secretly signed up for a lifetime non-cancelable subscription. And the sender is now demanding back pay with interest.
Yeah.
How does a simple sentence turn into an invoice we never agreed to pay?
That captures the structural deception perfectly. You are suddenly locked into a payment plan with exorbitant emotional interest rates.
Yeah.
You never even saw the contract. That is precisely how it functions. It superimposes a rigid transactional framework over a relationship that you believed was built on unconditional care.
Which is terrifying.
It is. And the debt is essentially unpayable because the currency isn't money, it is your compliance. And that leads directly to the second silent message.
Okay, hit me with the second one.
It's even more insidious. It's, if you don't comply with my demands, you are fundamentally ungrateful.
Oh, wow, which completely pathologizes the listener's boundaries.
Completely.
If I simply have a different preference, or if I want to assert a basic human need, it's no longer viewed as a normal interpersonal disagreement between two equals. My resistance is immediately framed as a deep, shameful character flaw.
Yes, the disagreement is elevated to a moral failing on your part.
Right.
Any boundary you attempt to establish is held up by the manipulator as undeniable proof that you are selfish, cold, and unappreciative of their suffering. You aren't just disagreeing, you are betraying them.
It creates a psychological catch-22, because if you try to argue with their logic and defend your boundary, your very act of arguing is used as further evidence of your ingratitude.
Exactly, you just prove their point in their eyes.
You literally can't win.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the third silent message. I am the good one here.
Ah.
By constantly invoking their past sacrifices, the manipulator immediately seizes the absolute moral high ground. Their past suffering acts as a protective halo.
Meaning they can't do any wrong.
Right. It makes them inherently righteous, which, by the laws of binary opposition they've set up, makes you inherently wrong.
This shift is it's fascinating. It's like this unsigned contract. I mean, it's the exact moment a relationship transitions away from communication and moves entirely into the realm of control.
What's fascinating here is how relationship experts define this.
Yeah.
That is a critical distinction to make. In a healthy dynamic, communication involves two autonomous individuals expressing their needs, negotiating differences, and trying to reach a mutual understanding. But when this hidden contract is invoked, the manipulator is no longer communicating a feeling or even a legitimate grievance. They are asserting leverage.
They are using a historical event as a mechanical lever to engineer a specific behavioral outcome from you right now.
Yes.
The sentence wears the mask of vulnerability, but structurally it operates as a crowbar.
And this brings us to the core mystery of this dynamic.
Yeah.
If this is an invisible, unsigned contract, if you never actually agreed to these terms, why do you feel so incredibly compelled to obey it?
Yeah, why does that knot in your stomach force you to capitulate? Because logically, you could just walk away.
Logically, yeah.
You could just say, I didn't ask for that sacrifice, so I'm not paying the bill. But in reality, people stay trapped in these dynamics for decades, constantly paying down an imaginary debt.
They do.
What is the psychological engine that actually powers this level of emotional blackmail? How does the manipulator enforce it?
The clinical framework for understanding this engine is an acronym used by therapists who specialize in relational trauma. It is called FOG.
Like literal fog. FOG.
Yes, standing for fear, obligation, and guilt. FOG is the manufactured atmosphere the manipulator pumps into the room to keep you disoriented, compliant, and unable to see the exits.
That is such a powerful image. If I did it for you, is the shiny bait on the hook. FOG is the heavy net that actually traps you.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like the design of a casino, you know. When you walk in, the lights are bright and the carpets are flashy, but very quickly you realize there are no windows, there are no clocks on the walls, and the layout is intentionally designed as a labyrinth to disorient you. You lose your sense of time, your sense of direction, and eventually you feel like you owe the house until you've gambled away more than you ever intended.
The casino metaphor is incredibly apt because FOG is specifically designed to bypass your logical faculties. It keeps you operating in a state of baseline anxiety and confusion. Let's break down the structural pillars of this casino, starting with the O, obligation.
Okay, let's hear it.
The entire strategy hinges on hijacking your natural evolutionary drive for reciprocity.
Because as social primates, we are wired to return favors. It's anthropological.
Exactly.
If you share your food with me during a famine, I am biologically compelled to help you build your shelter the next season. It is how human tribes survived.
It is a beautiful survival mechanism. But the manipulator takes this deeply ingrained social contract and warps it into an ironclad chain.
They weaponize it.
They manufacture a sense of duty that is wildly disproportionate to the original act. So you feel obligated to stay in a marriage that is actively destroying your mental health, or you feel obligated to hand over your financial independence to a parent.
Just because they, raised you?
Exactly, all because you feel you haven't paid off the initial investment they made in you.
And if you attempt to sever that chain of obligation, the manipulator immediately deploys the next pillar, right?
Yes.
Guilt.
Guilt.
This is where it feels like the very best parts of your personality, like your empathy, your compassion, your desire to be a good person, are literally weaponized against you.
Guilt is the enforcer of the invisible contract. Manipulators who use this tactic are highly adept at scanning for highly empathetic people.
They target them.
They are looking for individuals who have a profound dread of causing pain or being perceived as selfish.
Because for an empathetic person, the idea of hurting someone who supposedly sacrificed everything for them is just psychologically agonizing.
It's unbearable.
The manipulator doesn't view your empathy as a virtue. They view it as a control panel. They know exactly which button to press.
They know that if they portray themselves as a wounded martyr, your empathy will override your self-preservation. You will abandon your boundary just to alleviate their manufactured suffering and to reassure yourself that you are not the bad guy.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps darkest pillar of the FOG acronym, the F, fear.
Fear.
And I want to dig into this because when someone says, I sacrifice so much for you, it usually sounds tearful or disappointed, not overtly threatening. How is fear operating in that quiet, seemingly pathetic moment?
Well, we have to expand our definition of fear beyond just physical safety. For a social creature, attachment threats are processed in the brain with the exact same urgency as physical threats.
Oh, interesting.
The fear here is the terror of withdrawn affection. It is the fear of abandonment.
So it's the subtle implication that their love is entirely conditional on your compliance. If you don't pay the emotional invoice, they will pack up their love and leave you in the cold.
Yes. Or, alternatively, it is the fear of the explosive anger that often follows the martyr act if the guilt trip fails.
Oh, right, the sudden rage.
And quite frequently, it involves the fear of social annihilation.
What do you mean by that?
The manipulator implicitly threatens to smear your reputation. The subtext is, if you defy me after everything I've supposedly done for you, wait until I tell the rest of the family or our mutual friends how horribly you treat me.
Wow, it's the threat of being excommunicated from your own social circle. They will burn your reputation to the ground while playing the victim.
Exactly.
That creates a paralyzing atmosphere. You comply just to survive the emotional freeze and avoid the smear campaign.
This creates a highly predictable, cyclical loop of emotional blackmail. Experts note the exact pattern. I highlight my suffering, you experience agonizing guilt and fear of abandonment, and to relieve that internal tension, you capitulate and do exactly what I want.
Boom.
That is the FOG functioning flawlessly.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here for a second because we need to draw a very sharp line.
Sure.
Isn't it natural to feel a little obligation when someone helps you? Imagine a friend helps me move. They spend 8 hours hauling heavy furniture up 3 flights of stairs in the dead of summer.
A nightmare.
Right. A month later, they ask me to help them paint their living room. In that scenario, I absolutely feel a sense of obligation. I feel a pull of reciprocity. How do we distinguish between the normal, healthy friction of being a reliable human being in a community and being suffocated by this toxic FOG?
That's a great question. The distinction lies in the concept of free will and the consequence of a no. Natural reciprocity is freely chosen. It feels warm. When your friend asks for help painting, you likely want to help them because you value the mutual exchange in the relationship.
And crucially, if I truly couldn't do it, say I threw my back out or I had a massive deadline at work, a healthy friend would say, that's a bummer, but no worries, I'll grab someone else.
Right.
The foundational security of the friendship isn't suddenly on the chopping block.
Precisely. In a healthy dynamic, the favor is a bridge connecting the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
In emotional blackmail, the favor is a leash.
A leash.
Wow. Toxic obligation is paralyzing because you are not complying out of generosity. You are complying out of a desperate, panicked need to avoid the punishment, the silent treatment, or the guilt trip that you know is coming if you dare to say no.
Natural reciprocity feels like an exchange of gifts. FOG feels like paying a ransom. That clarifies it perfectly. But here's where it gets really interesting. Logistically, if a manipulator is generating this FOG continuously over the span of a 20-year marriage or a 30-year parent-child relationship, how on earth are they keeping track of all the leverage?
They don't just rely on casual memory.
Right, they can't just be spontaneously guilt-tripping you about a Tuesday in 2014.
They utilize a psychological mechanism that relational experts refer to as the sacrifice ledger.
The sacrifice ledger. Okay, let's explore this mental spreadsheet because this completely exposes the underlying mechanics of the covert manipulator.
Toxic individuals who rely on emotional blackmail maintain a meticulous ongoing mental spreadsheet. This sacrifice ledger records every single favor they have ever done for you, every minor compromise they have made, every single instance where they supposedly deferred their own needs for yours.
Line item. October 2017, I missed my favorite television show to pick you up from the train station. Line item. March 2021, I didn't buy the shoes I wanted so we could afford the nicer hotel on our anniversary trip.
Yes.
It is double entry bookkeeping of the soul.
And the cognitive distortion here is the key. They do not view these actions as autonomous choices they made out of love, or as normal compromises that are inevitable when two human beings share a life.
How do they view them?
They retroactively categorize every single entry on that ledger as a calculated high-yield investment, the expected return on investment, complete obedience.
And they are just sitting back, waiting for the asset to mature. They are waiting for the perfect moment of conflict to open the ledger and demand the payout.
Exactly. When you finally reach a juncture where you set a firm boundary or say no to a major demand, they don't engage with the actual topic at hand.
They bypass the conflict entirely.
Yes, they open the spreadsheet and start printing the receipts.
Yeah.
I moved away from my family for you. I worked the night shift to put you through school. I gave up my youth for this family.
And the unspoken, heavy punctuation at the end of all those sentences is, so who the hell do you think you are to say no to me now?
It is an attempt to bankrupt your right to dissent. Let's look at a devastating real-world scenario from the sources to see how this pivot functions in practice.
Let's hear it.
Imagine you sit down with your partner to discuss the future, and you express a deeply personal, foundational boundary. You say, I've thought about it, and I'm simply not ready to have kids yet. Or perhaps, I don't think I ever want to have children.
I mean, that is one of the most complex, vulnerable conversations a couple can have. It touches on bodily autonomy, life trajectories, financial fears, deep emotional readiness. It requires immense mutual respect to navigate.
But observe how the manipulator in our framework responds to this vulnerability. Instead of exploring your feelings, they say, wow, after everything I've done, I put my entire career on hold for us. I gave up that promotion for you, and you can't even give me this.
It completely pulls the rug out from under reality. The conversation is instantly annihilated.
It is.
It is no longer a discussion about the massive, life-altering decision of bringing a new human consciousness into the world. It is suddenly a debt collection issue about a career pivot from 4 years ago.
The psychological sleight of hand is breathtaking. The manipulator has successfully reframed a deeply personal boundary about your own body and future as a failure to repay a loan.
Unbelievable.
You are no longer an autonomous partner expressing a need. You are a delinquent debtor who is holding out on them.
Which is so profoundly disorienting for the listener, because the manipulator sounds so hurt. They sound like a victim, which immediately triggers the listener's empathy, making them think, oh my God, they're right, they did give up that promotion. I'm so terribly selfish.
Yes, the FOG descends immediately.
But keeping that kind of meticulous, weaponized accounting, that requires a highly specific personality structure.
It does.
We are trained to look out for the overt, grandiose villain, the screaming narcissist who walks into a room, demands all the attention, and overtly dominates people. But the most dangerous manipulators don't look like bad guys, do they?
No, they don't. They look like martyrs.
They look like martyrs. Let's get into this, because the person keeping the emotional ledger doesn't operate like a traditional narcissist at all.
They operate under what writers call covert narcissism, or the covert martyr syndrome. The grandiose narcissist gains power by demanding you recognize their superiority. But this profile gains power through the exact opposite mechanism.
Which is?
They gain power by suffering. They gain power not by bragging about their greatness, but by suffering as loudly as possible.
The covert martyr. Instead of wanting to be the hero on the pedestal, they want to be the saint on the cross. Because either way, everyone in the room still has to look at them, and everything still revolves around them.
That is a brilliant psychological parallel. Both the grandiose narcissist and the covert martyr require the world to revolve around them. They just use different gravitational pulls.
Right.
The covert martyr uses their suffering, their exhaustion, and their endless sacrifices as a way to dominate the emotional landscape of the relationship.
They don't boast about their achievements. They boast about their endurance.
Exactly. They constantly highlight their endurance.
You ask them how their day was, and you don't just get a normal answer. You get an epic saga of how they took on everyone else's burdens, how the entire office would collapse without them, how they barely had time to eat a single cracker because they were so busy serving others.
And how absolutely no one appreciates the depths of their sacrifice.
Yeah.
They construct an entire identity around being the ultimate caretaker, the perpetual victim of their own generosity.
But if you look closely at this dynamic, you will notice a glaring inconsistency in their emotional accounting.
Oh, a massive inconsistency. The ledger only flows in one direction.
Yes. They conveniently suffer from amnesia regarding what you've done for them.
They have a photographic memory for every drop of sweat they've expended for you, but profound, clinical amnesia when it comes to anything you have ever done for them.
Mhm.
Your contributions, your sacrifices, your daily acts of love are entirely minimized.
Or just forgotten completely.
Yes, or treated as the expected baseline. But their contributions are always heralded as monumental, Herculean acts of self-denial.
It's like they are playing a twisted game where the currency isn't gold or prestige, it's paper cuts.
Paper cuts.
Yeah, and whoever can bleed the most, whoever can prove they're enduring the most pain, automatically gets to make all the rules for everyone else in the house.
Suffering is currency. If we connect this to the bigger picture, what this constant broadcasting of suffering does is create a psychological halo around the manipulator.
A halo.
Yes. Because our culture equates sacrifice with goodness, the martyr begins to believe their own press. They use their pain as undeniable proof of their goodness. They think, because I suffer so much for others, I am inherently pure. I am untouchable.
And that halo becomes an impenetrable shield against accountability. Because if they are a saint, they can't possibly be toxic, right?
Precisely. It immunizes them from criticism. The text gives a great example of this. Imagine you try to bring up a legitimate grievance. You sit them down and say, hey, the way you spoke to me in front of our friends last night was really demeaning, and it hurt my feelings.
A completely normal conversation. A healthy person would listen, perhaps get defensive for a moment, but ultimately apologize and address the behavior.
But the covert martyr doesn't address the behavior at all. They instantly deploy the halo. How can you accuse me of hurting you? Look at everything I've done for you. After I spent my entire weekend cleaning the house so you could relax, I do everything for this family, and this is the thanks I get. You focus on one little joke I made.
It is the ultimate deflection maneuver. They completely invalidate your present pain by crushing it under the weight of their past sacrifices.
They effectively make it impossible for you to ever hold them responsible for cruel, thoughtless, or controlling behavior in the present, because they made you soup when you had the flu 3 years ago.
It leaves the victim completely paralyzed. You walk into the conversation needing an apology, and 10 minutes later, you are the one apologizing to them for being so ungrateful as to bring it up in the first place. You completely abandon the boundary you were trying to set just to soothe their outrage.
It is an incredibly effective defense mechanism for someone who lacks a core sense of self-worth and relies entirely on controlling others to feel safe.
Okay, we've mapped out the hidden contract, the FOG mechanics, the ledger, and the covert martyr personality. Now, what does this actually look and sound like in the listener's everyday life?
Let's apply it.
Let's apply this framework to the 3 most common relationship dynamics where this phrase is weaponized. And let's start with the most foundational one, where the power imbalance is baked in from literal birth. Parents.
The parental dynamic is arguably where the I did it for you narrative is most potent and most difficult to untangle because there is an objective biological and financial truth to it. Parents do sacrifice immensely to raise children.
They really do. The cultural script practically venerates the self-sacrificing mother or the endlessly toiling father.
Exact.
The classic dramatic line is, I worked my whole life for you. I gave up everything. I sacrificed my own dreams so you could have a better life. And on paper, that sounds noble. It sounds like the plot of a beautiful, tear-jerking movie.
It does. But to understand the manipulation, we have to look away from the content of the words and analyze the timing of their deployment.
The timing is everything.
When does a toxic parent actually draw this line? It is almost never during a quiet, reflective, loving moment of connection on a Sunday afternoon.
Absolutely not. It doesn't come up when you are just enjoying a cup of coffee together. It comes up the moment you choose an unapproved career.
Or move away. Yes. It happens when you decide to marry someone outside of their preferred religion or social class.
Yeah.
It happens, fundamentally, the moment you attempt to differentiate yourself and establish an adult boundary.
So if you are packing your bags to move across the country for your dream job, and your parent stands in the doorway crying, saying, how can you leave me after I gave up everything for you? What is the actual psychological translation of that sentence?
The translation is, because I sacrificed for you in the past, you are not allowed to live your own life.
Wow.
My sacrifice entitles me to govern your choices. It is not an expression of maternal or paternal love. It is an attempt to foreclose on your independence. The biological debt of life is being weaponized to prevent you from actually living yours.
Which is a crushing weight for an adult child to carry, because your instinct is to say, you're right, you did clothe me, you did feed me, you did pay for my braces, I owe you. but you owe them gratitude. You do not owe them your subjugation. Let's pivot to the second dynamic, which can be even more confusing because it starts on theoretically equal footing. The romantic partner.
In romantic relationships, the ledger often revolves around the weaponization of potential or alternate timelines.
Alternate timelines.
It is the narrative of the suppressed desire. You will hear phrases like, I broke off my engagement with my ex for you, or I turned down the partnership at the firm so we could stay in this town, or I changed my whole life to fit into yours.
And they hold on to that alternate timeline like a winning lottery ticket they never cashed, and they blame you for the fact that they didn't cash it.
Exactly. And the trap usually snaps shut later on, during a period of intense conflict or when the relationship has run its course and is failing.
When you try to leave,
When one partner tries to leave or asks for a major structural change, the manipulator drops the invoice. You can't leave me after everything I sacrificed for you. If you really loved me, you would stay and fix this. Look what I gave up to be here.
which implies that you somehow held a gun to their head and forced them to give up their dream city or their ex-partner, when in reality they chose to make those decisions because they wanted the relationship at the time.
Right.
They made an autonomous choice, but the ledger rewrites history to frame them as a tragic victim of your demands.
In the context of romantic dynamics, relationship guides view this specific use of "I did it for you" as an invisible chain.
An invisible chain.
It is a binding mechanism designed to hold the listener in place long after the dynamic has ceased to be healthy, joyful, or mutually supportive. It relies entirely on the obligation pillar of the FOG to demand that you sacrifice your present happiness to validate their past choices.
You are trapped in a miserable present to pay for a decision they made a decade ago. Okay, let's look at the third scenario, which I think catches a lot of people off guard because it happens outside the family structure. The friend or the mentor.
This dynamic is uniquely devastating because it often involves someone who genuinely did offer crucial support during a period of deep vulnerability.
Right. An older mentor, a boss who took a chance on you, or a lifelong friend who helped you through a crisis.
They will say, remember when you were broke and nobody believed in you? I was there. I gave you that loan. I got you that interview. I stood by you when everyone else walked away.
And again, that is a beautiful piece of shared history. That is the foundation of loyalty. It's a wonderful thing to look back on.
It is wonderful right up until the moment your trajectory diverges from their expectations. The manipulation occurs the moment you outgrow their shadow, or the moment you dare to disagree publicly, or simply when you say no to a favor they ask of you.
Ah, I see.
In that instant, that beautiful piece of shared history is suddenly weaponized against your present autonomy.
You're really going to side with the new management on this project. You're really going to say no to lending me money after I literally made your career, after everything I did for you.
Suddenly, their past support is transformed into a permanent veto power over your present autonomy. The mentor is suggesting that because they facilitated your rise, they own a percentage of your success and your loyalty in perpetuity. It is a profound betrayal of the initial mentorship.
I want to pause here and address you, the listener, directly. I want you to reflect on your own life for a second. Think about your own contacts app.
That's a great exercise.
Is there someone in your phone where you know instinctively that if you text them to say no to dinner or no to a request, you aren't just going to get a normal, oh, bummer, next time response. You're going to get a heavy sigh, a guilt trip, and an itemized bill of their past kindnesses. If you have felt that specific tug of war, you are dealing with the invisible ledger.
Recognizing that feeling is a crucial first step, but it leads us to the most critical juncture of this deep dive.
Because all relationships involve past favors, compromises, and friction. We all help each other, and we all occasionally feel disappointed when someone can't help us. So if these scenarios sound confusingly close to normal relationship friction, how can the listener definitively tell the difference between genuine love and a leverage campaign?
We can construct a very clear side-by-side diagnostic checklist from the source material. This helps you separate healthy sacrifice from manipulative leverage. Let's start with the markers of a healthy dynamic.
Okay, let's lay out the green flags. What does genuine healthy sacrifice look like in practice?
In a healthy, securely attached relationship, the most prominent marker is ownership. Healthy people view their sacrifices as their own autonomous choices.
Their own choices.
Yes, they do not view them as a lifelong debt they forced upon you. If they chose to move cities for your job, they own the fact that they made that choice for the good of the team. They don't blame you for it during an argument 3 years later.
So the sacrifice isn't brought up in arguments as a trump card to win an unrelated fight.
Exactly. It isn't stored as ammunition. Secondly, and this is vital, in a healthy dynamic, you are allowed to say no to them without being labeled ungrateful. Your boundary is respected as a logistical or personal limit, not treated as an insulting betrayal.
But to be clear, even in a healthy relationship, if I say no to something important, my partner or my friend is still allowed to be sad or disappointed, right? We aren't demanding robotic perfection.
Absolutely. They are allowed to be upset. They can express that disappointment openly. But the key distinction is that they express their hurt without attacking your core character.
They don't open the historical ledger.
Right. They don't rewrite the history of the relationship. They deal with the present conflict in the present moment.
Okay, flip the script. What are the blinding red flags? What are the definitive signs of manipulation?
The most glaring red flag is, once again, the timing. The phrase, "after all I've done for you," magically materializes almost exclusively when you are setting boundaries or attempting to assert your independence.
It's the break glass in case of emergency lever they pull when they feel they are losing control of you.
Yes. Another profound indicator is your internal emotional state following the interaction. After a conversation where they bring up their sacrifices, do you walk away feeling enveloped in love and supported? Or do you walk away feeling incredibly small, exhausted, paralyzed by guilt, and trapped in an invisible cage?
You walk away feeling the FOG. You feel that heavy, suffocating atmosphere.
Precisely. You will also notice a constant asymmetrical weighing of needs. Your current pressing needs are constantly placed on a scale against their past sacrifices, and your needs are somehow always found to be trivial, selfish, or unreasonable in comparison.
So what does this all mean? If we synthesize this entire diagnostic section down to one core philosophy, it is this powerful anchor point from the text. A gift doesn't need repayment. A tool of control always will.
That is the definitive dividing line between love and leverage.
But here is the difficult reality. Having that aha moment while listening to this, realizing that you are currently entangled in this dynamic with a parent or a partner, is incredibly validating, but it is also terrifying.
It's extremely daunting.
Because now you are faced with the prospect of changing the dynamic. What is the tactical playbook for the listener? How do you escape the FOG without detonating the entire relationship?
Psychologists who specialize in boundary setting have developed specific psychological postures you can adopt. This isn't just a rigid set of magic words. It is a philosophy of engagement designed to protect your autonomy while disarming their leverage.
Okay, let's explore these postures. Step one is the concept of acknowledge without surrendering. How does that actually work in the heat of the moment?
The goal here is to surgically separate two concepts that the manipulator has spent years deliberately tangling together: gratitude and obedience. The manipulator's core premise is that the only valid way to prove you are grateful for their sacrifice is to do exactly what they want. You have to break that link. You have to prove that gratitude and autonomy can exist in the same space.
So let's role play this. Say I am the covert martyr parent, and you just told me you aren't coming home for the holidays. I hit you with, I worked double shifts for 10 years to give you the childhood I never had, and now you won't even give me 4 days at Christmas. You are so incredibly selfish.
Your response needs to honor the historical fact of the sacrifice without surrendering your present agency. You say, I appreciate what you did, and this decision is still mine to make.
And this decision is still mine. The power of that "and" is incredible.
It completely honors the past without surrendering the present.
You aren't denying their reality, which would just lead to a screaming match about history, but you also aren't paying the invoice. You are holding both truths simultaneously.
Exactly. You neutralize the guilt trip. The second step is entirely internal, but it is arguably the most important. Name the pattern.
Emphasizing the cognitive shield.
Yes. Internally labeling it. When the manipulator starts deploying the heavy sighs and the tearful, I did it all for you, your brain is going to instinctively panic. You have to actively, internally label what is happening in real time. You say to yourself, this is emotional blackmail. This is FOG.
Why is that internal active labeling so crucial? Why can't I just try to ignore it?
Because if you don't explicitly label it as a manipulation tactic, your brain will instinctively start processing their narrative as objective truth. You start asking yourself, wait, am I ungrateful? Did they really give up that much? Am I a bad person?
Right, you get sucked into the content.
By naming the pattern, it stops you from absorbing their narrative as truth. You detach from the content and observe the tactic.
You stop getting swept away in the current. That leads directly into step 3. Refuse the emotional contract. This is where we hand the responsibility right back to them.
Correct. You gently but firmly reject the entire premise of the invisible ledger. You remind them that they are an adult who made their own choices. You say, if you chose to do that, it was your choice. It doesn't mean I owe you this.
You are holding up a mirror to their own autonomy. You are responsible for your past choices, and I am responsible for my present boundaries. Now, this brings us to step 4, which I think is where 99% of people stumble. Step out of the moral courtroom.
This is the most difficult maneuver to execute because it fights against our deepest instincts.
It really does. Arguing with a covert martyr is exactly like being a defendant in a completely rigged courtroom where the judge and the prosecutor are the exact same person. They bang the gavel and say, you are a selfish, ungrateful child. And your immediate instinct is to start laying out your own counter-evidence. No, wait, I'm not selfish. Remember when I helped you last month? I do care.
And the tragic reality is, the absolute second you begin to list your counter-evidence, you have already lost.
Because you have accepted their underlying premise that your core character is currently on trial, and that they hold the authority to act as the judge.
Exactly. The manipulator doesn't actually care about your counter-evidence. They don't want to understand you. They want to exhaust you until you yield. The experts warn strongly against ever defending your character when called ungrateful.
So when they call you selfish and every fiber of your being is screaming to defend your honor, what do you do instead?
You step out of the courtroom entirely. You refuse to take the stand. You do not engage with the character assassination. Instead, repeat the boundary. You say, I care about you, and my answer is still no.
I care about you, and my answer is still no.
No justification, no itemizing your own sacrifices, just the calm, immovable boundary.
Exactly. You leave them with absolutely nothing to argue against except the reality of the word no. Which brings us to step 5. The ultimate litmus test.
Watching their reaction.
This raises an important question. What actually happens when you stop paying the emotional debt? What happens when you start participating in the FOG? Do they suddenly have an epiphany and say, oh, wow, I see your point. I've been overstepping?
Rarely, if ever. If you hold your ground and you unequivocally refuse to pay the invoice, you will witness a profoundly chilling shift. If their initial sacrifice was genuinely rooted in love, they might be disappointed, but they will accept your boundary. But if it was manipulation,
the mask drops completely.
The mask shatters. If their love instantly turns into the silent treatments, smear campaigns, punishment, or threats, you have absolute proof. It was never about love. It was only ever about control.
And as agonizing and heartbreaking as it is to endure that level of retaliation, that horrific reaction is your final receipt. It frees you from the guilt because you finally see the machinery for exactly what it is.
Yes.
Let's recap the core journey we've taken on this deep dive. We've exposed how manipulators take a gift, morph it into a bargaining chip, and use fear, obligation, and guilt to hijack the listener's empathy and loyalty.
And the ultimate takeaway we want to reinforce for the listener is this. You can be deeply grateful to someone. You can even love them and still say, I don't owe you my silence, my future, or my self-abandonment. Genuine love never demands that you disappear.
Genuine love never demands that you disappear. That is the perfect anchor to hold on to. But before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final lingering question to ponder on your own.
A provocative thought.
Exactly. We have spent all this time talking about how to protect your identity from being erased by their sacrifices. But think about the manipulator for a second. If they have spent their entire life building an identity out of what they've done for others and keeping ledgers of who owes them, who are they really when the ledger is empty?
If you take away their leverage, do they even have a self left?
Exactly. It's something to really think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your eyes open and hold fiercely onto your autonomy. We'll see you next time.